Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time zone you're in. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar, Safeguarding the Power Grid, Data Security Strategies for Energy and Utility Organizations. My name is Shalonda, and I'm the Demand Generation Manager here at BigID. We've got an awesome webinar lined up for you all today with an amazing panel of industry leaders here from Accenture, SAP, the AES Corporation, and of course, Big ID.
We'll just go around and let each introduce themselves. So Erin, you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, Erin Hughes with SAP. I lead our cybersecurity advisory organization for North America.
Great. Good, Ryan.
Hi, everyone. Ryan Boulay. I'm the CISO for AES Corporation. We're a global renewable energy company cutting across generation, distribution, and storage, operating in 13 different countries with utilities in Indiana, Ohio, and El Salvador.
Awesome. And Tyler.
Hey everybody, Tyler Young, Chief Information Security Officer at BigID, responsible for both internal security, but then also working with our customers to ensure that our products are being utilized to their fullest. So happy to be on this panel.
Awesome. All right. So what are those key items to successfully doing the planning and design of how you want to go off and tackle this, right? These programs could be pretty broad, could go in a lot of different directions. Balancing making sure you get the whole thing that you need to do, but still having short-term success to show progress along the way. So maybe Ryan, you could start with an example here of how you've worked through that and kind of the plan that you've put in place.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rich. I think it starts with a good understanding of your risk tolerance as a company and the risk tolerance of the business. And where you want to be from a data protection perspective. So I think every program is probably going to be unique, a little bit different, so to speak, based on that risk tolerance conversation. And what are we using data? How are we moving data? How is it shared for different reasons? I mean, various industries will have different purposes, different regulatory environments to deal with, different controls that they need to put in place. And so just understanding first and foremost what data you want to protect and why you need that data, I think is really important. I mean, if you can start just by reducing the amount of sensitive data you have in your environment, if there are ways to do that, I would start there, in addition to kind of all the planning that goes on here. When we first engaged with BigID, our requirements were really focused on the privacy side. Like we wanted to look at privacy impact assessments. We wanted to look at the DSARs and how we could look at our workflow, put everything together, integrate with the environments that we think are critical. And it's just those two requirements that we started with, which kind of led us down this particular path. At this point, with the integrations that we have, we've got like 1.9 million unique records of PII, which is roughly comparable to our customer data sets in the 3 locations I mentioned earlier. And now we're looking at, kind of expanding that use into some of the other ancillary cases beyond privacy. And what can we do to kind of search for some of this other confidential data that we might have in some of our repositories, like OneDrive, like Teams, like Box, whatever it might be. And so I think just starting with what type of data do you care about, and then getting a sense of where is it at and how you're going to go about figuring out how to protect it will come from there.
Yeah, I like that idea of sort of the minimum required set, right? How do you reduce the attack footprint, the impact footprint, for example?
I think that's crucial part of the process, even though it may not seem like it. But if you're a company that deals with, say, credit card transactions, do you need to hold the credit card data, or can you outsource that to a third party who does that for a living, so to speak? If you're a company that has PII of sensitive information on your customers, what process, what business process is the reason that drives the kind of the storage or the maintenance of maintaining that type of data? Can you design something or design a process and work with a partner that removes that data, from your repositories, both in the short term and in the long run? so that, I'd say like the best model is elimination. Like if you could just reduce that footprint, it makes the data protection job so much easier.
Right. And you alluded to the processes a little bit, and everybody knows with SAP implementation, the first thing is to get the business process impact, right? So I think that's a good segue over to Erin for your perspective on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of a broken record, I guess, but starting in terms of planning and design is also that organizational structure we talked about earlier, the alignment, roles, responsibilities, executive sponsorship. That's all going to be key leading into that scoping exercise, right? Which is, what is the data that we need to protect? And this is going to vary from organization to organization, obviously. I've always in a cross industry use the term recipe, right? Whatever makes you unique, it can be governed by regulatory requirements, especially when we talk about customers and personal data. We use the term crown jewels a lot. Where are your organization's crown jewels? And defining what you need to protect, I think first in business language is really key to the scoping exercise. And not only defining, but again, agreeing on criticality, I think is crucial. Because I see a lot of customers jump to technology without laying the foundation, and then struggling to get to something that we would consider successful because they didn't have those foundational elements agreed upon in terms of the who, right, roles and responsibilities, and then the what do we need to protect. And I think to Ryan's point, as we're going through this exercise, and especially with all of the the move to cloud, the focus on digital transformation, we really have an opportunity here for change in, what are we collecting? Why are we collecting it? How are we using it? Do we need it, to your point, Ryan, because of the risk associated with that? And then, getting down to how are we securing that data, depending upon where it is, and how do we even know where that data is? And I think that's obviously Tyler, you can talk a little bit more about that on the BigID side, but, knowing where that data is and then how we need to secure it. I think, when we really start talking about the critical data elements, again, I think that, starting with privacy data, Ryan, you mentioned, regulation typically drives a lot of change and a lot of focus, right? But we have customers that are really starting to expand into other use cases because they're saying, okay, we now have some confidence in what we're collecting, that it is, needed in terms of, business process, for example. But what are some of those other data elements that we need to be protecting, and what type of mechanisms can we be using? And really, how can we facilitate this? And I think that, especially in the SAP world, when it comes to data security, for a long time, information security and SAP security, and in a lot of cases, this still remains, we're two separate organizations. And so the different strategies for protecting data from an information security and enterprise perspective were different and would remain different than those from an SAP security perspective. And we're certainly seeing a shift because of the recognition, I think, that in a lot of cases for customers, SAP systems do hold a lot of that critical or sensitive data. And so while in the past it may have been more of a, back office system, if you will, that's no longer the case given the footprint of an SAP landscape. And so this increased focus on, data security in an SAP environment, what are the different controls that we have in place? What are the mechanisms that we're using to secure that data? And what is the opportunity, again, back to digital transformation, for change as we are transforming our business? We should be thinking about how we can transform the security that goes along with that.
Yeah,
and I think, go ahead, Rich.
I'd say it's often not just what's in SAP, but we like to call it like SAP and friends, right? As that SAP data gets populated with all the interfaces that apply, that either upstream or downstream in the business process, where you see data replication, a lot of data interfaces, codependency, federated data models, that SAP and friends model sprawls out pretty quickly. In some cases, it's 40 or 50 different, systems and applications. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, Tyler, now you're getting to see the same thing across utilities as well as other industries. So I'd like to get your perspective on that as well.
Yeah, and I think something that Ryan and Erin have both said: why do you need the data, and what data do you have is crucial, and that's something that BigID is helping organizations throughout the world and every sector solve. But I think once you understand where your data is at and what type of data you have, it's really imperative to understand who has access to the data and the risks associated with it. And so that's something that we've built at BigID, is the ability to not only just know where your data is at and the type of data, but also who's accessing it And now another layer on top of that, which is the risk associated with it. Is that data stale? Like Ryan mentioned, why do you need it? Well, do you need all this extra data? So why don't you reduce it to kind of reduce the risk overall? And if you can get rid of data, the risk goes away really quickly. And so we have, automation tools that can do this, but then also understanding like our external third parties accessing critical sensitive data. So leveraging something like BigID's Access Intelligence, we can classify the data, tell you that you have sensitive data in this place, and then we can tell you who's accessing it. So Ryan and team can go back and say, oh, look, these are the normal people that should be accessing this sensitive data. And then they see suspicious domains or other users that are accessing it. And now they can look in that and do more of like a user behavior analytics and start investigating it a layer further. So I think, tying this all up, any design process when it comes to reducing your data footprint starts with people, process, and then it ends with technology. And I think that's what you're seeing here.